will defeat. Let our flag mean freedom and not a battle drum. We are all the heroes of Scotland. We're a nation hand in hand. We will march beneath her banners to protect our ancient land. In the glens and cities, there on every street, are the living heroes no army will defeat. Let our flag mean freedom and not a battle drum.
That's what you call being an idiot, an absolute bloody idiot. Forgot to press play. Thanks for that, Cecil. I'm not in a very good humour with myself, I'm afraid. All the software. I tend to be rather impatient when I'm not well.
And rightly so.
What an idiot to think to do it. What an idiot. Oh, God. Anyway, we need William. He'll be here shortly, he says. And who do you call him?
Ecky's in the chat.
Yeah, he's in the chat, as always. I don't know why he does that.
In fairness, I only got your email at 8:57, John, so I don't know when you sent it out.
That'd just be about right.
Okay.
As I say, this software is just slowly driving me crazy. It really is. It used to be really simple. You set up the email, you put in the link, and you press send, and off it goes. No, not anymore. No. It's not that simple anymore. Yeah. Every time they add something, it's always more complex. So I say, it's me. I'm just very short on patience at this moment. And it's, as Toffee says, it's because I'm not 100%. I'm always very much like this when I'm not 100%. So tell me what's new, what's happening to you, Cecil? Take my mind off my ails.
Well, all week it's just been craziness at work for various different reasons that I won't burden you with. Then I got in tonight, and somebody said, "Oh, looking forward to that movie review." I said, "Oh, movie review? Why is it the last Friday?" "Oh, yes, it is." "Oh, but John's poorly. He surely won't be doing it today." "Oh, he is doing it today." So literally, as soon. Oh, and then on top of that, Bonnie Lad. Well, I'm presuming he did say if he didn't let me know, he wouldn't be streaming. So I'm presuming he wasn't streaming. So I literally chucked the link up for that. Because as William says, I prop up YouTube. You know, I've got rid of one. Hey, I got rid of one of my strikes, so COVID's back on the menu. Yeah, unlucky. And so I literally sort of finished work, saw that there was no stream, so set the link up for the stream, flew out to do the shop, got back, put together some half-arsed set of shit to cover tomorrow, pardon the expletive, and and then watch the film, which isn't a chore. And I said to Toffee in the chat, because I sent him, because our good friend Toffee's on tomorrow night on the news stream on my channel tomorrow night. And I said to her, I said, I probably know the script. I've seen it that many times, but I always enjoy watching it. So a great pick, John, I have to say. And I'll hand it back to yourself, mate.
Well, say good evening to William. How are you, William?
Aye, not bad. Good to be here. Good to be back again. Good evening.
Good evening to you, sir. We're just waiting on Eki. I suppose he's waiting on me. Putting in the, what do you call it? The link. What am I doing here? What am I doing here? I don't know what I'm doing here. This is not what I'm doing. It's the wrong thing I'm pressing. See, my mind's not working properly, guys. It's just not.
You want to get yourself a rat, John. You don't want a mouse, you want to get yourself a rat.
Ah, dear. Well, I sent him an email, but you know what he's like, his emails. Right, there's a link there for Eki. Hiya, Scott Sarma. Nice to see you here. So, what's new with you, William?
Not much. This week I'm celebrating, well, my wife and I are celebrating 4 years of marriage. So it's been a bit of a celebration this week. But we've been together for about maybe 15 years now. So we've been together quite a while, but got married in 2019, kind of just before the whole COVID scenario, the whole pandemic, just before the whole circus rolled into town, if you like. So it was good to get it out the way. If we waited until 2020, I don't know if we would have gotten married, to be honest. It would have been knocked in the head, and I would have probably thought, well, that maybe means that we should knock it on the head. You know how the way things work sometimes, but we tied the knot, and we've not looked back, and it's been great, and we're happy, we're content, and we spent a few days in what they call glamping, not camping, but glamping. I don't know if you know about it.
No.
Basically, it's glorified camping, where you stay in a kind of chalet, if you like, a wooden log cabin.
Oh yeah. Okay.
So you've got, and you get a fire pit and a barbecue and all the rest of it, and it was great.
It sounds lovely. Lovely.
It was really good. So it's been a really good week, and I'm still on holiday until basically September. So I'm all good. I'm killing time, enjoying myself basically as much as I can, especially with the kids and my wife, because you never know, right? So it's not a chore. It can be sometimes, but I love nothing more than being with my family as much as I can. So 4 years together. Here's to many more, hopefully. Happy times.
I'm sure there will be. Good evening, Eki. How are you, sir?
Well, good afternoon. I'm well. I don't have much to report. I don't have like a fancy, awesome story. I wish I did suddenly, but yeah, I'm okay. I'm good. You?
Well, I'm recovering from bad illness.
Yeah, you know, weirdly, I don't know what it is, but I've heard reports of a lot of people getting weirdly sick and ill over this past month. And about like 3 weeks ago, I was really, really sleep deprived. And for reasons I have no idea why, my immune system was low, and I caught the weirdest cold I've had in forever. And it's upsetting only in that it's not like really bad, it's just kind of unpleasant, but all the time, and it just won't go away. It's really weird.
Yeah. Well, I've had this pneumonia for many weeks now, too many weeks, and it's just got worse. And finally, I had to get the doc in, and at that point, I just stopped broadcasting. So I'm not long back at it, the broadcasting that is, but I'm not fully well yet. As far as the cigarette smoke was concerned, is I am not telling people I've quit smoking, and I'm not telling people that I'm still smoking. For the moment, I haven't had one, and we'll see how it goes from there. So,
Without going too far into it, might I suggest vitamin D3, specifically D3, and non-soy based? My understanding is that higher latitudes, that's much more helpful. You're probably already taking something like that, but I'm just saying,
no,
like,
I don't take anything, Eke, to be honest with you. I think that's one of the many reasons I've been explaining to those and such as those, that because my body's clean in that sense of drugs of any kind, apart from cigarettes, the antibiotics have really, knocked me for six. They really have.
well, yeah, and I'm not advocating anything that's unnatural or whatever. You can get D3
Sure.
from natural sources with almost no chemicals other than just the gel capsules that they're contained in.
Sure.
And I wouldn't suggest it for long durations or anything, but if you've got a nasty illness, my understanding is it helps clear it up. That's it. That was the whole thing. That's all. I just
Okay,
want to offer something because it sucks
Sure.
to hear that you're not having
By
a
the
good
way,
time.
you
So
sound a bit nasally yourself.
yeah, that's the cold. And like I say, it's just like, strangely enough, I do feel a lot better compared to like 3 weeks ago, but it's just upsetting for reasons I cannot explain. I'm just a little bit under the weather, but like all the time.
Yeah.
It sucks.
Okay, folks, let's move along to the film review, and let's start with William. William, The Gunfighter. What was your initial impressions of the film? Did you like it or did you not like it?
Overall, yeah, it was likable. I'll go with that.
Likable. Okay. We'll stick with that one. Okay, how about yourself?
Basically the same as William. I overall liked it, but there's a structural issue. I mean, you know how I am. For some reason, I always feel like a Debbie Downer or something. Oh, I've got some kind of criticism, blah blah blah. But yeah, normal griping that you can expect from me. But otherwise, yeah, I mean, it was still pleasant, so I liked it.
Okay. Setson, we come to you now, sir.
Absolutely brilliant. One of my favourites, probably in my top 5. I'll put it right out there. This is an iconic Western, all about the anti-hero. This is a brilliant film. And these youngsters just, it's like casting pearls before swine, John. I will say that. No.
I know.
There you go. Yeah.
And I would certainly give that a big second as well. I would agree with that entirely. It is also another fine example of the end of an era.
Yes.
Aye, because John remembers it well.
I do indeed.
Oh, there we go.
I
Straight
do.
in there.
1880.
I had reluctantly had to hang up my gun belts and say goodbye to that way of life.
I couldn't resist. Sorry.
That's okay. Yeah. But that's part of what it is, in my view. It's the end of an era, but it has many other things in it which make it very, very watchable and rememberable. So let's start with you, Eke. What would you say about the central performance of Gregory Peck?
Fantastic. As okay, so without going into the structural issues, yeah, I think that he played a pretty convincing. Because what was his overall character? He was a gunslinger who was involved in some rather terrible deeds in the past, and he's a combination trying to get away from it and rise above it. And so there's a kind of reflective quality in his character that I quite liked. I thought it was kind of nice. Yeah, as Sensa was saying about the anti-hero concept, I like it. I like the idea of a guy that's, I mean, I find characters like that relatable. People that are either down on their luck or have made some bad decisions or whatever it is, and they're trying to make themselves better in some way. And I feel like that theme is absolutely present within the movie, and I love it. I thought it was great, and watching him almost come to terms with and grapple with his past. Yeah, I liked it. I thought it was pleasant. I liked it.
Very good. William, what would you say? Would you agree?
Sorry, what's the question? Sorry.
You expect me to remember the question?
I can't remember what the exact question was. Sorry, John.
How do you think Gregory Peck handled the part that he was playing?
Well, up until I watched it, I thought Gregory Peck's was just a pair of glasses. So I now know he's also this actor, if you like. But yeah, it's hard for me to compare it to anything because I've not watched many movies in this kind of category. To be honest, it might even be the first Western that I've watched from start to finish. So I'm unsure, but I reckon, yeah, it was good. He was a very strong character. His acting was good. I was a bit confused do I like him? Do I not like him? Should I like him? Should I not? Because he never appeared to do anything wrong, but he was this bad guy in his past, which we don't know about. So I was unsure. Again, you get this kind of, I don't know, you want to kind of like the bad guy almost. So yeah, I thought his acting was really good, and I can't fault it anyway. So yeah.
Yeah. So his action in the first saloon, well, how does that identify him as?
Yeah, well, going by what we've seen,
Well, that's all we can go by.
Going by what we've seen, he wasn't really a bad guy, but they talk about how in his younger days, if you like, he was a bit of a I don't know, a tearaway. So I was unsure, should I like him, should I not? But I wanted to like him.
Sure. Cecil, what did you think of Mr. Gregory Peck's performance?
Well, it's classic of that era, Gregory Peck, because you've got to think on that it wasn't too many years beyond that when he was in Big Country, which was a brilliant Western. Once again, another one that's in my probably my top 5. But he was also in To Kill a Mockingbird, which is a phenomenal book and film. I thought the representation. So he was on a crest of a wave at that point in time, and it was him who, I think he was in the £1 Million Note. Do you remember that one? He
Yeah,
was in
yeah.
all of these, and he played pretty much a similar sort of character. You know, this sort of stoic, non-confrontational, but don't mess with me type. And when it says he had a bit of a history, it probably meant that it doesn't explain what his history is, but what you can take from it is
You're just trying to defend him already.
well, of course I am, because he wouldn't have drawn first, put it that way. He was he might have been a brash, petulant person, but having said that, you know, I always harken back to the story of Colonel Chuck Yeager, United States Air Force, who was one of the most decorated Air Force servicemen. And the reason why, they subsequently found out, the reason why Chuck Yeager was so successful is because he had 2010 vision. So when people talk about 2020, Chuck Yeager had 2010 vision. So he saw the opposition long before they saw him. And that gave him an advantage. So if Gregory Peck, you know, had an unnatural advantage of being quick on the draw, you know, when they talk about these people being quick on the draw, then so be it. What another thing that you have to think of, which is, I suppose, steeped into the mystique of this particular film, which they don't often talk about, is that a lot of times, especially if the guns of the time, you know, you couldn't hit a cow's arse with a banjo, basically. You know, they were very unreliable and very,
Yeah.
you know, they weren't very accurate. I mean, you literally were standing 2 or 3 meters away.
Yeah, you had to be right up close
from the person to have stand, unless you had like a shotgun, to stand much of a chance of catching these people out. And like I say, the Wild West was such a short run. I mean, it's such an iconic period of the era. But the reality is that the Wild West, you know, it was essentially the fallout from the Civil War, but it really didn't start to burgeon until people started putting in, you know, subsequent to the Civil War, when people started going out to the West. And it literally was the Wild West, because they had homesteaders where the government essentially said, well, we'll start giving away this land like Tut and Satney. Get yourself out there. So literally, there was no law and order there, not until they started to put in things like local sheriffs and the county sheriffs and all this, like that was yet to come. So you had an essence of lawlessness. So even if you were a decent, upstanding Christian person, you would still be relatively heavily armed, because you didn't know who was coming up to knock at your door. Yeah, and that's essentially how this thing started off. And then a lot of times when people got, you know, such in this case Johnny Ringo, and they do hint towards this in part of the film, where, you know, I'll rejoin this, because this is one of my best film, where the old grass widders turn up, because you got what I call grass widders, who turn up to tell the sheriff, you need to sort this bloke out.
all the ladies of the town.
And they were saying, like, he's been responsible for 50 people being killed. And he's like, well, no, it's more like 15, actually. You know what I mean? But the problem was that you got people who, once again, it was all about this. There was far more reputation over substance in that particular era. Yeah. And there's a famous case. I can't remember who it was, but there's a famous case of this, either a sheriff or, you know, from that era. Yeah. And he just got this reputation of being, it wasn't Wyatt Earp or anybody like that. It wasn't anybody in the prime time or mainstream, the notoriety. But he got this really reputation of being this, you know, quick on the draw. And that sheriff in the film didn't actually wear a set of guns, yeah?
Yeah, that's it.
he got this reputation of being this quick on the, maverick. He could take out any, could cut the wings off a gnat at 30 paces sort of thing. And when he retired, he sold his memoirs to like these papers in the 1920s and that. And he said, the hell of it is, I never fired a gun in the entirety of my life as a sheriff. I lived off a reputation I'd never even earned. So there you go. That's pretty much the way it used to be. It was all. And in this country, we used to call that in the time of the Dick Turpin era of the highwayman, which preceded obviously the Wild West by 100 years or so, if not slightly longer. And it literally was a cock and bull story. And this is a factual thing that happened in Stony Stratford, of all places, down in, I think it's Northamptonshire technically, but it's sort of the Northamptonshire, Buckinghamshire border, Stony Stratford, a beautiful little town. It's where they filmed Withnail and I, for instance.
Sure.
And there are two hotels there. There is the, you've got the Cock Inn, and you've got the Bull Hotel. And these were two main coaching houses. Now, what you've got to think of, Stony Stratford at the time was this major coaching route from, from everywhere down into London. It was a big, well-known coaching stop-off point. And what used to happen when they were talking about the likes of Dick Turpin or whatever, these people who were staying overnight, the coachmen or whatever, they go, oh, you hear about Dick, and they'd get hammered there, and then they'd go to the Bull and say, oh, did you hear about that Dick Turpin story? And it would be what was been told in the other place, but then a little bit extra 10%. And then somebody would go from the Bull back to the Cock Inn and say, oh, yeah, I've heard about that. Yeah, but did you know this? Yeah, I've heard about that. Well, did you know about this? No, I didn't hear about that. And then it would go back and forth. And that's where you got the notion of a cock and bull story. There's probably only about 10% of it that was baked in reality. And this is no different. A lot of these reputations that were built up, a lot of it was more just, people getting pissed hearsay sort of thing, rather than factual, evidence-based. I saw this or I saw that. It was so it was of its time, and it just goes to show that even in the modern era, everybody. Well, there were certain kids when you were at school had reputations of being these hard nuts and all that malarkey. Oh, don't want to go. Do you want to speak to? Why? Oh, he's a hard bugger. You don't want to speak to him. I'd speak to him. Find out there's nothing wrong with him. You know what I mean? It was just all, just all bullshit. but in this case, like I say, the Gregory Peck character, he was, the one thing they admit to, that he was quite brash, a little bit like the character who we see at the start of the start of the film, Richard Jekyll, a very early role for Richard Jekyll. And then obviously
that would have been you, Sensum.
Yeah, that was me. And,
I'll see him.
And then the guy at the end, obviously. So, like I say, these people are all based on the reputation that precede them. And like I say, every time, and especially in those days, because it's happening now with all this fact-checking nonsense where, only the prescribed media can have a say, which is going back to those Wild West days when they used to write things like, Jimmy Ringo responsible for 3 deaths. That's shit, that is. What do you mean? Well, I'll never sell a paper. Put him down for 20. Okay. Yeah. Jimmy Ringo responsible for 20 deaths. And then in the next newspaper, when you hear his story, Jimmy Ringo responsible for 30 deaths. So that's the way it used to exacerbate, and it's no different anywhere and any time. The only thing I will say is the Wild West was such a short amount of time historically that to have such a captivation and hold, even to this day, with modern westerns that are coming out, just tells you that the time itself must have been so notorious, and I say that in the correct sense of being notorious, that it just had such a profound effect across history. So we're even talking about, neck end of 150 years later. I mean, the film The Wild Bunch with William Holden, Ernest Borgnine, that was in the early 1900s. I think that was in 1900, 1901. Yeah, and the thing that's special about, and that was right at the end of what was then the Wild West. And the thing that was special about that film is that all of the bandits, if you like, William Holden's gang, they were all carrying Colt 45 semi-automatics, seven-shooter semi-automatics. So,
Yep.
like I say,
Wait,
it's just,
in what year?
1901.
It's just at the turn of the century, William, this movie.
Oh no, just
This one's
semi-automatics.
1880, I think, but
Yeah.
the Wild Bunch film was set in the early, it was either 1900 or 1901, and they were all carrying Colt 45 semi-automatics.
Yeah, the timeline sounds about right. I know very little about it. I just happen to remember that semi-autos were not popular until the very, very early 1900s.
Yeah, because they get involved in the Mexican Civil War, and the German army's involved with their Gatling gun and all this stuff.
Yeah. Well, also the Browning 1911, infamously, put out in 1911, but that wasn't the first semi-auto by any stretch. I had like three thoughts go through my head. That's all.
Yeah. But getting back
And
to
the reason, just the thing, John, this was where the military complex come in, because Samuel Colt, well, the Colt company, I should say, had developed this, this rapid reload. It was the reload that they were talking about, yeah? So press a button, drop a clip, put a button in, fire. You haven't got to put the rounds in individually anymore, yeah? And all of the guys who were on the front lines and who knew what it was like being in a gunfight, yeah, said, yeah, that's bollocks, because if I'm in a gunfight and I've got a 6-shooter, when I press the trigger and it doesn't fire, I press the trigger again and then it does fire. This is what would be called a double action revolver. So in other words, the trigger also cocks the handle, because you used to have single action where you had to cock the handle and then fire. But the double action meant you pulled the trigger, it fires the handle. If you get a misfire, because ammunition wasn't as reliable as it is today, you just basically pulled the trigger and it would cycle the next round. With a semi-automatic, you had to cycle the chamber. Oh, sorry, you're dead. The other guy's got you. So the boys in the know back in the day, they hated the semi-automatics, but they were forced to use them because money, arms contracts.
Yeah.
See what I mean?
I was going to pick up on the point that you were making a little bit earlier, which is absolutely accurate, certainly for around here. And that was, and I have spoken about it before, about street fighting. And that was filled with reputations as well. And a lot of these reputations were exactly that. Nothing but reputations, not built on actual result of street fighting itself. So there was a lot of that, oh, you don't get near him. Who's that? Well, that's Swan, he's notorious, you stay away from him. Or that's Woods over there, you stay away from him. These guys came with reputations built in. As was my own stepbrother. He came with a reputation built in. And anywhere they went, it would be challenged just like a gunfighter.
I just want to chime in for a moment because it's interesting. There's actually there is a huge advantage to the semi-autos relative to a double action revolver in that because the double action requires so much more energy to be put through the trigger, it requires a trigger pull that is much heavier. It requires, I think, like 7 or 9 pounds or something for your average center fire. So you're pulling the equivalent of like 9 pounds with just your little finger there. And when you're aiming, especially at distance, that's going to increase the likelihood that there's a little bit of wobble in the barrel. As where with a semi-automatic, the way that at the time they're using hammer as opposed to Striker, because Striker hadn't been invented. But the slide would cock the hammer back, which functionally turned it into a single action. The advantage to single action is that it only requires a couple of pounds of pressure to actuate it. So that means that at distance, there's less likelihood that there's going to be wobble at the barrel, which means you can get a much steadier shot long distance with a semi-automatic relative to a double action revolver. Just a funny thing. I'm pretty sure that at the time, I'm quite confident that Sensum is correct that at the time, untested technology had not been refined yet, so it was probably not as reliable. I can imagine it was not as reliable at all as the double action revolvers.
I'm going to challenge that.
Yeah.
I'm going to challenge that because what you have to remember is most of these gunfights took place in around about 3 meters away.
Fair enough.
So if you're 3 meters away from somebody and then all of a sudden misfire, oh shit, I need to cycle the barrel, you're dead.
Fair enough.
Because the other guys pulled the trigger. And also, if the semi-automatic is so good, then why did they standardize on the 9mm round, which is a nasty, snatchy round, instead of 10mm, which is what Don Johnson used in Miami Vice, because he was using a gun called the Bren 10, which everybody said was probably one of the finest semi-automatic weapons of all time, because it did use the .10 caliber rather than the 9mm one. Yeah.
Okay. Before I address that, there is something that I want to go ahead and make mention of, which was I remember hearing a cop say something about how 3 seconds, 3 shots, 3 feet. That's how most gunfights happen.
Yes.
So within that context, I kind of agree that a wheel gun would probably theoretically be incrementally better. But with the reliability of semi-autos now, I would probably still go with the semi-automatic. But I mean, what like it even matters? This is all fantasy land stuff. Not like I'm going out and getting into like bar fights with people that are strapped or anything.
I'm telling you now, if ever you did, a 45 snub nose special probably going to do you better,
Yeah.
with Tyrone.
With regards to 9mm versus 10, I couldn't speak to that. The only thing that I know is that for whatever reason, 9mm was the standard since like the early 1900s. And the only reason that I went to 10mm is because of a gunfight that happened in Los Angeles in the 1990s or 80s, I forget which, that involved it involved a guy, I think he was like a bank robber or something, and he was just ripping through body armor or something. And if I recall correctly, the no, it was the other way around. I think it was the other way around. Yeah, the guy had body armor, and the FBI or SWAT or whatever, they had 9mm, and they weren't puncturing through the body armor, so they wanted something that they thought would probably puncture through body armor and through like light body armor, nothing heavy duty, not like military grade or whatever, but just through light body armor. And so that's when they developed at the time the 10mm round, which is a much snappier round than the 9. And you can even notice, I think it was North Hollywood, Exile the Viking. I think it was North Hollywood. And you can even notice that back in the early 1900s, the Bond gun was 380, which is a 9mm Kurtz. So like 9mm goes back a long freaking way. PPK, that's what it was. It was a Walter PPK. So like I don't know what made them go to 9mm, but they just stuck with it for a long time. And the 10 mil only came out because of like one special thing that happened one time.
Like I say, if you think back to the burgeoning days of the Wild West, or sort of into its sort of post-Civil War, probably mid thing, when you had the likes of the Winchester 73, which was a James Stewart film. The reason why cowboys loved the Winchester was because it took the same rounds as the Colt 45 they had on the side of the leg. So they were using the same rounds for both the rifle and the sidearm, which was great.
Yeah, and they're all freaking deaf because they didn't wear hearing protection.
They don't care. As long as the other bloke's dead, they don't care.
No, I know. It's just funny.
Definitely.
It's just funny, that's all.
Anyway, sorry, John, we've hijacked
No. That's a great thing about blethering. You never know where it leads.
Yeah.
No. I mean, I'm a complete pacifist and I've never shot a gun in my life, but I do know. The only reason why I know a little bit about them is because, my uncle was very much a connoisseur, if you like. And he used to be, when they used to be allowed over here, he was members of various clubs, and he'd fired pretty much everything. And he always used to say that Bren 10 was probably the nicest gun that he'd ever fired, and it came over special from the United States. And that it literally was the Sonny Crockett gun, and everybody wanted a turn, and everybody said, "Yeah, that's like really good." He also had I tell you what, he also had a go of an Ingram M10, which is like the Yanks version of the Uzi 9mm. It was the Ingram M10, which is the one that Chuck Norris uses in Invasion USA. But that was interesting. Really, really reliable. Very few moving parts in the Ingram M10, just like a square block. Everybody sees Chuck Norris on the front cover of Invasion USA, and they think, "Oh yeah, Uzi 9mm." It's not. It's an Ingram M10. There you go. And has a similar sort of skeletal shoulder thing like what the AK-47 used to have as well. Yeah. There you go. But I don't know much about it. I'm just saying,
Anyway, did anyone think that the love interest was good or bad or indifferent?
Well, I thought she was great, but of course, I mean, you throw a pretty face on screen. I mean, come on. Side note to that, I thought it was hilarious when he asked, "So what's going on with her? How's she doing?" And the response, I forget which character it was, but the response was something to the effect of, "Yeah, she's still pretty, a little older looking." And I was like, dude, you got like the hottest actress on set. You're complaining that she looks like she's, 25 instead of 22? Like, what are you talking about?
Yeah.
But no, I thought she was good, though. She was a good character.
Yeah. I'd like to draw everyone's attention to something that I can't help but see when I watch this film, because like Sensum, I've watched it a few times. And here's the thing that I cannot not see anymore is, and I'm talking about the second saloon, the one that all the action's in, okay? The one that Carol Malden runs. Now, I thought this was an unusual saloon insofar as it's got a big heater. Looks like a wood burner in it. But just as importantly, if you look at either side of the doors, there's actually freestanding machines there. And that's something that you don't normally see in a Western set. And I was talking about this to my son, and we were coming to the conclusion that probably at least one of these machines sells cigars or possibly tobacco. Or am I the only one that notices that there are machines standing inside that saloon? William?
Probably condom machine. I don't know. To be honest, I never noticed, so I can't comment. To be fair, I did watch some of it again. Sometimes I'll do that. I'll watch a wee bit before I come on, but even then, I never noticed. So I'm
Okay.
unsure.
Okay. Sense, did you notice?
I noticed that throughout the entirety of the film, you never saw anyone smoking,
Yeah.
which means it wasn't sponsored by any of the big tobacco companies, because otherwise it would have been. The one thing that I did see freestanding is when the sheriff said to the deputy, "Yeah, you need to rake your ass over and keep an eye on old Gregory Peck there, Jimmy Ringo." I keep wanting to say Johnny Ringo because that's a character out of Wyatt Earp.
Yeah.
Go and keep an eye on Jimmy Ringo there. So he puts his gun in the drawer, gets the shotgun out, a couple of rounds in the shotgun, walks to the saloon and says, "Yeah, I'm not going in here with this," and leaves the loaded shotgun on the outside of the saloon, knowing full well that nobody was going to touch it. Can you
Yeah.
imagine that now, with all of the, multiculturalism we have these days? That's when you used to have. Hecky, that was when you used to have a high trust society, mate.
Dude, I'm not kidding when I say the shot of him putting the gun down before he enters the bar. In the back of my head, I was like, this is exactly what I would write if I wanted to have a freak show happen immediately after, just a bloodbath violence fest. And then I was like, yeah, but this is like 1950. And then I had to like walk myself back into, no, but back in those days, you could do that.
Yeah.
And it took me out of the movie. That shot actually took me out of the movie because I'm so used to bloodbath violence fests because somebody made a stupid mistake now. It's funny.
Yeah.
Well, when John was, you're quite right what you were saying there, John, because I, once again, completely unrelated, and this was a book I read years ago. It's just a Pulp Fiction Western novel, yeah? And one of the lady characters, and I say that in the loosest of sense because of an evening she was a professional, shall we say. But during the day, she used to be the match seller. And her big gripe was that because she used to sell the matches for, I think it was like 1 cent for the matches, she used to get 2 cents because everybody used to give her a tip. So when they brought in these machines that were like 1 cent just literally for the matches, she lost out because even though she was one of the ladies of ill repute, shall we say,
Sure.
we thought, yeah, but it's a cent, isn't it? If I buy 3 boxes of matches, I can get myself a beer for the money that's left over. So everybody's a tightwad. It's not just you Scottish people, William and John, where there's 1 cent in it, oh, that's better in my pocket.
Bloody racist.
I am a racist, don't you forget it. But anyway, especially when it comes to the home counties, everybody knows that.
Well,
But yeah,
I'll
that
just-
was one of the funny points in this story where the sort of the anti-hero once again in this Pulp Fiction novel literally walked in covered in dust, must have stunk to high heaven, and literally had walked in and said to the barkeep, I want a quart of your finest whiskey, and don't be giving me any of that rye stuff. Yeah, so in other words, he wanted scotch. Yeah, don't be getting me that rye stuff. I want 2 cheroots. I want your hottest bath, and I want your best bar of soap. And this woman goes, and would you like some matches to come with that? He goes, no, I've already got some. She goes, you see? And she goes off on one about these matches machine.
Exactly.
Of course, you know, the anti-hero obliges the lady in due course, you know, so she still earns her money.
Sure.
But it was just one of those little points when you were saying that, you know, yeah, eagle-eyed, yeah, these freestanding machines. I'm certain one of them was selling matches for a cent. So the women who would have ordinarily been selling matches would lose out on 2 cents.
It's simply because the saloon occupies such a large time frame in the storytelling. And I couldn't help but see these machines standing there. And I thought, what is they're supposed to be selling? But should anyone decide to go and watch this film again, have a look at these machines that are standing there. See if you can figure out what it is they might be selling. And it might be that it is cigars and matches. Who knows? But I'd like to draw your attention to another little gem in this, at least what I think is a little gem. And that is the scene between Jimmy Ringo and the Marshal. And while they're having this serious conversation, this old fella appears in the doorway and comes up and is concerned that someone's trying to burn his house down. Did anybody think that was hilarious, or was that just me?
I don't know that I'd say that it was hilarious, but it was certainly amusing. He literally hat in hand. Sir, can you please help me? Sheriff.
Just thought it was amazing.
But the other incidental one, which was brilliant, is in a similar vein, is where the sheriff's going over to see Gregory Peck wherever he is, or to go and see the stable keeper to find out how Gregory Peck's horse is. And he walks past these two guys on the floor just rolling around, dad fighting sort of thing. And one of the blokes just before he gets there goes, "I've seen better fights in the church on Sunday." And the sheriff just literally steps over them, walks over, goes and says, "Right, how's the horse doing?" "Yeah, it's not so good." "Have you got a spare you can give old Jimmy?" "Yeah, get his gear on." And then he walks back, steps over them again, and then walks back, gets a bucket of water. Once again, little class moments. It's little class moments like that, you know what I mean? Which is obviously these unappreciative whippersnappers wouldn't pick up on.
Well, you see, for my money said so, from a film making point of view, I thought that was quite a brave little scene to put in there. This one about the old fella, his house is getting burned down, and he's so concerned about interrupting an important conversation that he's very reluctant to do it. But I thought that would be, for a director or even a writer to write that into the dialogue, and a director to allow that to go in there, I thought that was quite a brave decision, because it comes at quite a dramatic moment in the story. And very unexpected. Just like, as you say, with the guys rolling around in the dark, supposedly fighting. I don't think that's the kind of thing that you would see in a modern film, to be honest.
Well, yeah, I mean, now, again, ultra violence. I mean, you see the shotgun, set outside before the man enters the building, and because we've seen so many movies where a person just for some reason grabs a gun and starts slaying people for reasons, seeing sort of a tongue-in-cheek approach to quote violence end quote, where it's a couple of guys that are just kind of pissed off at each other rolling around in the dirt, a very undignified fight. that's kind of what fights were, I assume anyway. A lot of the times, like I've seen a lot of fights between two white guys, and it's almost more posturing than anything else. Like the violence is extremely limited, extremely superficial, and once it's determined that one can overpower the other, like the fight is just over,
Yeah.
and that's it. You know, they don't go into gouging body parts or anything like that. The fight is just over, and that's the end of it. And I kind of feel like that's what I mean, back in the mid 1900s, during the filming of that movie, the demography of America was still like 95% white people. So that's what a fight probably would have been like. It probably would have been a couple of dudes just tussling and being like, I hate you. No, I hate you. And
Yeah.
then they get tired and that's about it.
Yeah. Everybody goes home. Go for a drink. I just thought these were interesting little inserts that you would not get in a modern film. And even at that, I thought that would be quite a brave thing for a director to put in there. What did you think about that, William?
Yeah, thought it was a bit strange. I thought we might find out more about it later on.
No, it doesn't come to it.
Yeah, I was half expecting to see it or hear about it again, but I thought I could only imagine it was to emphasize how important this person was seen. Where a guy walks in and tells them that his house is burning down, and they're like, "Yeah, well, wait a minute, we'll be there. We'll be there later. I'm speaking to this guy, so it's irrelevant, right?"
Yeah.
But yeah, I also thought, well, surely we're going to see a wee bit more. But yeah, strange in a sense. I don't know. I can only think it was to emphasize again how important this guy was meant to be.
Sure. And the events of the day. So anyway, did you find when Jimmy Ringo finally meets up with his good lady, did you find it all very believable, the love story that then ensues? William?
Did I believe the love story? I'm unsure of the question. Sorry.
Yeah, well, that's the story. That's the question. The love
Yeah.
story that is meant to be between them, right?
Yeah, it was all very predictable, to be honest, in that sense. You could kind of always see where it was going. The only thing that did surprise me was Ringo sat down with I think it was the sheriff, and he said, "Look, I'm 35-year-old and I've not even got a watch." And I thought, wait a minute, this guy's 35. Surely not, right? He looks about coming on 60. So that threw me a bit, but yeah, you could see where it was going. He was never going to be back again in a year's time to get them and take them to this ranch they were going to get. It was a complete fairy tale. You could see the guy wasn't leaving. He wasn't going to be leaving, no matter how quick he could draw. And of course, it was the young guy out of the blue who wanted to get the mantle of, "Look at me, I'm the toughest in the town." But of course, coming with great power comes great responsibility, I suppose, and fighting off the next wannabe, the next alpha male, with this big reputation that people tend to get. One way or another, people get it. They gain it by physical, or again, like Sensum said, the whole cock and bull. A lot of it can be word of mouth, and people can believe that a lot of the time. I've even seen it here. Or so and so, this, that, and the next thing, and it's not even true. So you never know what to believe, to be honest. And that none of that's changed. it's still the same in that respect when it comes to a community. But there's always got to be the love story, I suppose, and yeah, it never worked out. Quite a sad ending, but there you go.
Yeah. Of course, the reputation's passed on by cheating because he is shot in the back. It's not as though it's a proper gunfight of any kind. He is shot in the back.
Yeah, but he drew first, remember?
Well, did he, or was that just what
Of
was
course
said?
he didn't. Yeah, he was only saying that so
Of
the young
course.
lad could then see, and he got to see straight away. The sheriff, I quite liked the big kick in the mouth when he left and walked away, and he was basically like, "There's your first taste of it," and it looked like a proper kick as well. So I'll have to give it credit on that.
Yeah,
And on that note, I kind of expected a wee bit more gunfight, a wee bit more action, but
yeah,
I don't know. Maybe I'm used to explosions and the whole '90s movies, I guess.
possibly. Yeah. What about you? Said some. Did you feel the same about the love story and get shot in the back?
Well, it was clear that you said that he hadn't seen his kid in 8 years. Now, it wasn't so clear whether or not he'd seen the young lady in that amount of time also. But you have to think on that of the time, people probably were a lot more reticent to dilly-dally. And also, what you have to realize is that that lady was a single mother, but she wasn't a widower. And there was a massive difference. Like a lady who was a widower because of, say, the Civil War or something of that nature, there was a lot like any man who married a widower, in other words, her husband had been killed or had died from natural causes, for instance, she hadn't betrayed her husband. So effectively, even though she had children, the slate was wiped clean. Yeah.
Yeah.
And also what you have to remember on, because this is what happened with my own grandparents on my dad's side, was that my granddad had a child and my grandmother had a child, but they both lost their spouses through illness.
Yeah. Yeah.
And they literally lived not next door to each other, but one door removed from each other. And when one was at work, because my granddad was a pitman, they would look after one. And when the other one, she was a scullery maid. Do you remember that term, John? A scullery maid?
Oh, yeah. Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Yep.
And vice versa. And in the end, you just said, well, we're pretty much looking after each other anyway.
Yeah.
Should we just make it official? And it was like, it wasn't like this, waltzing through the glades of green grass and the violins were playing. It was like, well, it's going to be easier if we're just in one place, isn't it? Yeah. You're right, really. And then they had another 4 kids, one of which was my dad. But like I say, there was no stigmatism there. Whereas, you'd be talked about, if you were a loose woman, you'd be talked about.
Yeah.
Oh, have you seen such and such a lady? Yes, she has a child, and she's not a widower. Oh. Whereas, have you seen such and such a lady? Yes, she's a widower and she's got that young boy. You would think she would try and find herself a nice man to settle down with again, because she's been dealt such a rough ordeal. But literally, that was the thinking, because a widower hadn't actually cheated on the husband or had carnal relations without being a husband. So essentially, the slate was wiped clean, and that was how you got to think on. These were Victorian times, and like I say, the head of the grass widows who turned up to sort of bawl out the sheriff was the epitome of a Queen Victoria character, wasn't she? All
Absolutely.
dressed in black with all the other ladies who were all dressed in black. So probably, either widows from natural causes or widows from, say, the Civil War.
Sure.
And that's what they used to call them. They used to call them grass widows because they used to say they put them out of grass.
Yeah.
But the number of small towns, etc., where they literally were the moral compass of the town.
Sure.
Because shaming and shunning was a very real thing.
Yep.
You know?
Absolutely.
And it should come back because we wouldn't have all of this woke shit if they.
That's for sure. That's for sure.
Yeah. So yeah, that's my opinion. I think it was a relationship that was of its time, and also, I think that the fact that even though she was saying that, you'll get caught out, the thought of having that stable family unit of a husband, a wife, and the son living on a small holding in the very north of California, or into Oregon or even Washington State. I didn't think that was a thing back then, but California was a known thing. Maybe hadn't got as far as, although, yeah, the gold rush was sort of round about that time, or just before then. Was it 45 in San Francisco? The gold rush. Eki would probably know better that than me.
I think it was 49. That was when it became a state. I don't remember. It's
49 is San Francisco 49, so it must have been 49. Yeah.
No, but I think 49 is when California became a state. I think, but I do recall that the gold rush was around that time.
But
I should know this, and I don't. I feel bad about that.
But anything north of Sacramento, which is where the Mason-Dixon terminated, hence why Sacramento is the state capital of California, a place only as soulless as Dayton, Ohio, I would say. But anywhere north of that was effectively undiscovered territory, so he could probably hide himself away. But
sure,
yeah, it's. I think the way that they portrayed it was portrayed appropriately, in as much that this lady had a son to another man, and she hadn't busied herself about. Other men had showed interest, but she wasn't interested in them. And I think that was probably outside of either losing a husband through war or natural causes, in other words, being a bona fide widower. Yeah. I think the grass widows, if you like, of the time would have shunned any relationship, and hence why you may have had men, young bucks, if you like, trying it on, which is pretty much the dating game of today sort of thing. But they wouldn't have been looking to sort of settle down. I've no doubts there, because they know that the grass widows of the town would have shunned her, not necessarily them. Yeah. Do you see what I mean? Because that was the quid pro quo of the time sort of thing.
I thought it was interesting, though, how they used that with a little needle into Jimmy Rinkle, that the guy who's going to shoot him at the back has tried it on with his woman, and he's placated by his friend who's now working in the saloon, that she wouldn't have anything to do with him, and gave him a right telling off. But I just thought that was an interesting little drip that was put in there to help the story along, to help feed the idea that there is an animosity between these two. Slight as it might be. So anyway, if you were going to give it 1 out of 10, and 10 being the best, William, what would you give it?
1 out of 10. I'm gonna have to give it 7. I'm gonna give it a 7. So not too bad.
No, that's not too bad at all. Not too bad at all. Okay, what would you give it out of 10? 10 being the best.
I would give it a 6. I was going to talk a little bit about the structure
Sure. Carry on.
issue, and I'll use that as my reasoning for why 6. And the only reason for me is that I have this thing about protagonists that are very active in the movies. I really like it when a protagonist propels a story forward and engages in real decision making, and he did engage in decision making. However, I feel like the antagonist or conflict wasn't as clearly defined as I would have preferred. Yes, I'm arguing for Die Hard, where you've got Hans Gruber at the end, and your big fancy shot where the guy falls off a building or something. But that's because Bruce Willis, undid the clasp for the watch, which indicates that he still has agency and is the one actively vanquishing the foe or whatever. And I feel like with you can think about any number of these movies where you've got a protagonist that defeats an antagonist, and the antagonist is typically personified as a human being of one sort or another. And I feel like and then that personification of badness, evil, or whatever is then vanquished frequently physically. And I suppose what I'm saying is, in this movie, the antagonistic force was not so clearly defined that the protagonist dealt with the antagonist. In fact, the opposite is the case. I would argue that the movie is technically a tragedy, in as much as the protagonist was actually, he was killed in part because of the antagonistic forces catching up to him in one way or another. He was destroyed by the antagonistic forces. In that sense, I would say it's technically a tragedy. And even if he were to lose, I still, in the back of my head, I'm like, no, if he's going to lose, I want him to lose like on purpose, or I want it to be like an intentional loss that somehow serves a greater goal or something, anything. And that's what I would have preferred. So I liked the movie generally up until the end, but I was disappointed with the ending because I wanted him to either vanquish those 3 brothers that were stalking him, or I wanted him to figure out a way to get back to, I forgot his wife's name, but I would have liked for him to have figured out a way to get back together with her. And instead, to the credit of the movie, 1950s, this was just at the very leading edge of what would have been later termed like women's liberation or whatever. And you can actually catch just a little bit of that estranged wife, single mother, so on and so forth. The thing that the protagonist ended up doing was kind of healing his relationship with her and forging what should have been the beginnings of a relationship with his son, which I think are good things. And I think that's laudable. So I like that was his motivation. I just, I am the way that I am. I always want everything wrapped up in a nice, neat bow, and it wasn't. So I'm disappointed because it didn't satisfy my specific, tastes. So that's the only thing.
Yeah. Okay. So, what would you give it? 6?
Yeah, I would say a 6. Again, for technical reasons, because I really like having a clearly defined protagonist antagonist relationship, and I feel like it wasn't as clear cut as I happen to like. So
Okay. Did I ask you, said something?
You didn't, John, but I'm sort of Packer's in the ballpark here because Packer gave it a solid 9 out of 10. I'm giving it an 8.5 out of 10. I'll tell you why. Because I know
Okay.
what 9 out of 10 is, and I know what 10 out of 10 is. This is right up there. Like I say, it's probably in my top 5 of all-time westerns. It's not the top one, but it is in the top 5. I'm giving it a solid 8.5. We've obviously got 2 youngsters in our midst, but we'll allow them that little, they're innocent, shall we say?
They have room to maneuver.
Yes. No CGI, you see, John. That's where it failed, you see.
Yeah, that's it.
But what about yourself, John? What would your rating be?
I think I would have to give it, at the very least, an 8.5. Because for me, it's one of those films that every time I watch it, I see something different. Now, I never noticed those machines in the saloon. I'm not saying that they're important or anything, but it just adds a measure of detail to a story. The idea of the wood burning stove in the center of the saloon itself. Carl Malden doing a very, very good job of the saloon keeper, and the support really from all of the performers, including what might be regarded as the comic relief, Charlie, the deputy fella. Not quite comedy relief, but almost. So for me, it's got so much going for it, and I think it's genuinely a film that if you were to watch it again and again and again, you would see other things in it. And again, that's what I like about it, the fact that he does teach the lesson to the young fella, although he hasn't quite yet realised it, that he's going to have a hell of a life from here on in, because he's now got what he wanted, but not
He's
quite
got the
way.
reputation.
He's got the reputation, but not in the way that he wanted it.
No.
Because he's cheated to get it. He shot him in the back. He did.
Well, worse than that, John, because Gregory Peck wanted it to be known that he drew first.
Yeah.
He's now got the stigmatism of being the man who was quicker than Jimmy Ringo.
No, correct. And that makes it even worse, as you say.
Yeah.
Now there's no way out for him at all.
Yeah.
You know? And because the character itself is such a young man, it's possible he's got a few years to go with that.
Yeah, and also it was a nice moment, which was the redemption character, where there was that young chap who came into the bar who didn't know Jimmy Ringo from Adam, but had obviously been on a path of being could have quite easily gone down that route.
Yeah.
And yet he got himself a solid little woman, started off with 50 head of cattle, now had 400, and they were breaking even.
Yeah.
And he said, I'll buy you a drink. He goes, no, I've just the one, because I've got to get back, because she might only be little, but she's bigger than me. Do you know what I mean? That was when you were half believing the story that then transpired, where he sat in that room and he's saying, look, I'm going to get myself over to California. Yeah. And we can do a little small holding and all this malarkey, and had her even believing in the dream that could come true.
Yeah.
And like I say, had it not been for, and that would have been in that era, because you've got to think on, this was what, a couple of years before Shane, or 2 or 3 years before Shane, where you have yet another anti-hero who walks off into the sunset. Obviously, Gregory Peck died in this particular movie, but it was up until that point, pretty much with probably rare exceptions, every single one of the Gregory Peck characters were the heroes. And this essentially was the anti-hero. It was like, don't be like me. I may be a noble and honorable character at heart, but do not choose the path that I've chosen.
Yeah.
So, like I say, there was that moralistic element as well, which obviously came for him in the end. Because obviously, the easy way out for Hollywood at that time, and I've not seen any reviews on that, but I have no doubt in my time, no doubt in my mind that at that time, when that film was released, and the hero or anti-hero dies, would have been a complete and utter shock to everybody. Why? And there would have been complaints. There would have been writing to newspapers and saying, this is outrageous. Why did he have to die? Blah, 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 blah. Well, because it wasn't expected.
Yeah.
And when you think back, did that make the film better or did it make it worse? And if people were being honest with themselves, they probably thought, yeah, because if the ending hadn't have been the way that it would have been like every other, nickel and dime Western movie that we'd seen prior to then.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So this was different. So 8.5, John. I think that's a solid mark. Yeah.
And the other thing as well, of course, is at that scene when he's dying, everyone is on his side. Nobody wants him to die at this point. And that's our kind of redemption as well. Even Charlie wallops him. So, yeah, for me, it has everything. So I would give it a good 8.5. So that's my choice, folks. I think it's who is it next?
It's Eki next, and he's got a choice between horror, and that does include certain sci-fi films, which are also technically horrors, Eki, if you wanted to pick them, and fantasy. That's the other category.
Well, the lazy person in me wants to just go for Alien 1979 because it's easy. But the thing is that the only version that I would want to watch would be the theatrical cut. I actually don't like the director's cut. And I can find the director's cut for free online on Odyssey, but I can't find the theatrical cut for free online for reasons that I don't know. So that's why I'm not going to go with Alien 1979. Instead,
you have
I've
to
already
pick
picked
now
out.
if you don't want to, mate. But
No, I've already picked it out.
okay.
The Cabinet of Dr. Caligari, 1920.
Ooh, that's an interesting one. William will love that one.
Yeah, William was my first thought when I picked out that movie. So
Yeah.
I
That's,
think it's starring Tom Cruise and Kate Winslet, just so you know, and filmed in fabulous 3D.
No, it isn't.
You're gonna have to wear special glasses.
Is that the
Jesus.
send some Eki? Is that the colorized 3D version?
No.
Technically, it is colorized, but the thing is that was a decision on the part of the director.
Right.
He actually colorized the film itself with specific tints, so it's technically colorized. But that was, again, it was intentional. It was specific to what the director wanted.
It also stars one of my favorite baddies, Conrad Veidt, who was was he the Jafar or something like the baddie in The Thief of Baghdad with what was his name? That Indian lad again. Oh, what a brilliant film that was, The Thief of Baghdad. Do you not remember that one? Sabu, was it? The young Indian lad?
I'm sorry to say, I don't know silent films.
Oh, The Thief of Baghdad. I'll have to type that in because it's going to do me nuts in.
Is that your choice, Eki?
Yeah.
Caligari?
Yeah, Caligari.
Sabu,
Kevin.
yeah, it was Sabu, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
here I'll put a link in because I found a decent quality of it. I think it says that it's 1080, which is that's a
No,
very
it's
decent.
not.
What's that?
It won't be.
What? Wait, what?
Yeah. What, 1080p?
Well, I mean, come on, dude. We're talking about a movie that
Back
was
in
made.
those days, it was 50p, wasn't it?
Yeah, exactly, dude. 1080p coming out of something that was filmed in like 100 years ago. Like, you're doing great. You know, I'm sure the quality of the
Great
video
film, though. Brilliant film.
outmatches the film.
Brilliant film. Yeah.
Yeah, it does. Here, I'm gonna put the link in the chat. So,
William will love it.
yeah, and I'm putting it into the chat here as well. So I've got it here on your stream internal, John, for you, and I've also got it in the chat for YouTube for anyone else. But yeah, it's like it's supposed to be one of the first of the horror movies. I almost went with Nosferatu. But the thing is that like more people have heard about Nosferatu, and I kind of thought it would be neat to go with a movie that is not as infamous. So that's why I went with Caligari.
Okay.
Yeah. Just on that little note there, Eki, did you ever see the BBC production? Quite recently, actually. Well, I say recently, in the last 20 years or so. Called Shadow of the Vampire, where they
Yes,
had Willem
with
Dafoe
Willem
playing
Dafoe.
Max Shred. Yeah.
Dude, I will say this: the title sequence for Shadow of the Vampire is to this day among my
Brilliant.
favorite title sequences ever made. I freaking love that title sequence.
It's brilliant, isn't it? It is absolute class. Yeah.
Yeah, anyone that hasn't seen it, like, it's, in my opinion, it's on par with the stuff from, like, what is it, Total Recall, 1991. I love that title sequence. I actually think that Shadow of the Vampire is on that level of good in terms of title sequences.
I have
Yeah,
it as
John
part of my collection.
Malkovich, Eddie Izzard, although Eddie Izzard, as we know now, not
Well,
quite the
yeah.
man he used to be.
He's half the man he used to be, yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Willem Dafoe, fantastic film, brilliant film. Yeah. Oh yeah, Matt Hancock there. That is a fantastic film with German subtitles. Once again, a superb film. William would love it.
But anyway, yeah,
He's got very quiet, William.
He's been watching Netflix all the way through this, John. That's why he keeps on having to ask what question you've been asking.
I'm just sensing Sensum's tone of laughter. So yeah,
In fairness, though, William, it means M stands for murder. Yeah, the original of that with Peter Lorre. I think it's what 1930, 1931. Eki, can you remember offhand? It's right about that time.
That's right.
Now
yeah.
I
don't remember.
German.
I honestly do not remember.
So it's in German and it is subtitled, but I think it is on free like YouTube or whatever.
so like a silent movie again.
It's brilliant. Very, very, very clever.
No,
Very-
it's
yeah,
not.
it was
It's not
31.
like a silent movie. It is a silent movie.
In effect, it is. But honestly, mate, I tell you now, I know you've got your proclivities when it comes to black and white and silent. But the one that Eki's picked out there, you know, the cabinet of Dr. Kalergi, or whatever his name is, Kalergi.
Yeah, it's the cabinet of Dr. Kalergi. Yeah.
Yeah, Kalergi. Yeah, no, it's a very, very clever film with a.
Yeah,
just-
it's also, well, whatever. We can talk about that in a month's time, I'm sure. So anyway, that's my pick. It
brilliant.
seemed like
Yeah, no, I look forward to watching that again
Yeah.
for the 20th time. I can literally say I know the script to that one because I've seen all the subtitles.
nice. Well, there's not a lot of subtitles, so it's a pretty easy script to even memorize if you wanted to.
Yeah, Klaus Kinski. Yeah, that was a good version as well. That was a good version actually.
It
Yeah.
was indeed. Yeah, it was indeed.
Yeah.
Yeah. So look, folks, mainly because of my recent illness, unless everyone's got something more to say, we could actually just close the stream now, if you wish. Unless you want to go talk on. Would you
I'm
like
good to go on if you want to go on for a bit.
I don't mind. I don't mind, William. Yeah, I'm just asking.
I'm gonna
I'm
have to.
happy to go on with what you're comfortable with, John. In fairness, because you're the poorly party at the minute, so you know
Okay.
you decide, sir.
Well, I'm trying to extend myself every day a little bit in terms of eating food and staying awake. So yeah, let's continue then. So we're going with Caligari.
Yes.
Okay, doke. And I've already got it bookmarked thanks to yourself. Although I think I have it as part of my collection. I know that I've got M for Murder as part of my collection.
Did you say it was a German movie?
Yes, yeah.
And
Yeah, but it was before Hitler.
I know. That was the way to say. No wonder Sansom likes it then.
No, well, hold on a minute. I don't carry water for Uncle Addy. Don't be feeding the 77th Brigade any rumours, you. All I'm saying is the reason why Dr. Calligraphy exists is probably because of Weimar Germany. Let's put it that way. Yeah. So,
oh, absolutely, absolutely.
So there you go.
I'm gonna absolutely say that Dr. Calgary is 100% because of Weimar Germany.
Yeah.
A lot of these movies.
So retract that slander, will you?
Yeah. And for
No
better
chance.
or worse, I do think there is a real lesson in studying Weimar Germany. And one of the reasons that I've recently become very interested in movies that were produced in the 1920s, especially, is because, yeah, what were they? They were a response to what was going on. Even if subconsciously, they were a response to what was going on in Europe at the time.
Yes, but it's a response that's coming from a certain quarter.
Yeah. Yes. You do need to be aware of the people who are producing these movies.
Correct.
I can think of one or two examples of movies that were directed by people who would have been sympathetic to the people who produced Weimar Germany, and the movies that they made, though I would find many elements disagreeable, they were still responses.
Yeah.
And so mostly I'm just looking at things like responses.
Sure.
Because
It's just worth pointing out, though, Eke, that it is from a particular quarter. And it is, in many ways, a tragedy that because of the First World War, Hollywood takes over as the film producing capital of the world, whereas had it not been for the way things worked out in Germany at the time, it would have been Germany.
Yeah.
Which would have been incredibly interesting.
Yes.
In terms of filmmaking, I'm talking about.
Yeah. Yeah, I just every time I think about these things, I really do just lament that the technology and funding was generally held by people who were hostile to us, and so it's unfortunate in my mind that the people that were hostile to Europeans so much, to European culture, they were happy to help one another, and for whatever reason, Europeans, in large part, they did not understand the value of media production. They just didn't get it, and that's a tragedy. That's a danged tragedy in my mind.
Yeah.
Because, yeah, just as you're saying, imagine the movies that could have been made by people who actually understood it and thought about it. I was watching. Well, no. I'm going to pull back a little bit. I was about to lament that there isn't a lot of that going on now, but there is. There is some. Though even that, I suspect, is compromised. I was watching a movie called Nefarious 2023. It was just put out this year. It's not a great movie by any stretch. It was funded by Glenn Beck. He makes an appearance in the movie. So, lots of qualifiers here. And for anyone that isn't aware, Glenn Beck was like an American shock jock type or something, who delved into like conspiracy theories or something. Kind of a blowhard, but yeah, kind of a well-meaning guy anyway. So like, whatever, I'll let it slide. I don't really care. Anyway, in this movie, Nefarious, it talks about. I'll spoil it for the people. Well, it's not really a spoiler. They talk about it very early. I think with the first like 10 minutes. It's about a convict that is possessed by a demon, and a psychologist is interviewing the criminal to determine whether or not he is sane or insane, and if he is deemed to be sane, he will be executed. It's the day of his execution, because the plot has to happen. There has to be stakes or something. And if he's deemed to be insane, he's gonna continue to live. And in the movie, they actually do talk about the theology of demons, or rather, demonic possession, the nature of evil and good, and so on and so forth, and how angels and demons interact with one another, especially those who happen to hate God. And it was interesting. They actually got the theology, as far as I can tell anyway, largely correct.
Yes, I've heard about this movie. It's very good, actually.
It's interesting. It's danged interesting.
Yeah.
And in the back of my head, because I'm always on about structure, I'm always talking in my own head. I'm always talking to myself about the structure of what the hell I'm watching. And there are like two glaring plot holes in the movie that make it basically unbelievable for me. Like, it just took me out of the movie the moment I realized both of these plot holes. And so I ended up watching it as sort of like a technical exercise after a certain point. But the thing is that coming back to the idea of movies that are being made by people hostile to us versus movies that are being made by, quote, our guys, end quote. This could be seen an example, Nefarious 2023, could be seen as an example of a movie that is not made by people who are hostile to us. I believe that there was some shenanigans here and there. I could get into that, but that's for another day and time. But the thing is that there's a little bit, and I would like to see more. I find it encouraging, if nothing else, that they at least tried. Real effort was put in. You can tell that this was made for only a couple $1 million. Like, they put their all into it. Somebody put up money, and you could tell that the actors meant it. They were actually performing. They were doing their job. They were doing well, in my opinion. And yeah, sure, cinematography was acceptable. It wasn't great. The script writing was decent. For what it was decent. But it's like, okay, that's sort of like a taste of what's possible. Just imagine if you were to get genuinely talented people tens of millions of dollars to make movies that they really believed in, people that weren't hostile to us, that would be incredible. I would love that.
Yeah, that's a dream. At the moment, that's a dream, my friend. Sorry to say. But yes, I've heard a lot about this film. There's a lot of research, proper theological research has gone into it. So it is, in one level, pretty accurate to the subject matter. And I've heard lots of good reports on it.
I can tell you one thing for sure. When I was watching the movie, the character who is the demon, he was saying things that, in all honesty, they reflect my own views on some of the things that we're going through right now.
Yeah.
And I was like, wait a minute. I'm not the only guy thinking this. Wait a second. Books have been dedicated to this. People have been talking about this for centuries, and I feel like I'm almost, not almost, what am I talking about? I'm late to the game. And here, I clearly centuries of thought had been put into this, and I'm just like, oh, hey, wow, did you guys know? Meanwhile, anyway, it's just funny.
Sure. So, what have you got on for the weekend, Sensum? What's the layout for tomorrow night with you and Toffee?
Well, the first thing I was going to say with regards to Ecky's last comment about that film, Nefarious, I haven't seen that one, but I will watch it.
No.
But I've seen this clinical psychologist doing the rounds, and I think I know him from a conversation with James Delingpole, where he was talking. He was saying to James Delingpole, "Look, all I'm saying is this: I have to deal with these schizo idiots, yeah, on a regular basis. And the only thing I'll say to you, James, is you start quoting scripture to these schizos, they go apeshit. And these are people who have no religious affiliation whatsoever. And his bent is that, the schizos are probably getting little sort of voices in the ear sort of thing saying, yeah, tell him to shut up. He said, no, genuinely, he said, I've been in with people who wouldn't say they're schizophrenic, but they wouldn't say boo to a goose. As soon as you start quoting the Lord's Prayer, he says they turn into raging animals. He says, I can't explain that. He says, and these aren't religious people.
Yeah.
And he said it's because it's basically they turn around and say, the people who are the voices in my head have told me if I don't stop you from saying what you're saying, it's going to get a billion times worse, sort of thing. So, yeah, it's quite an interesting subject matter. One that I have I can't say if this bloke's an idiot or not, or well, he is a clinical psychologist and he does work with the clinically insane in the United States.
Can you type that guy's name in the chat?
I can't remember.
Is that the guy that's been on Mark Windows on the World?
Might have been. I just know him from. I could go through James Delingpole, the Delingpod back catalogue, and find him. I just don't know his name offhand. But this bloke's 100% sober. He is a clinician. He just says, I just literally said. He goes through all these things. He goes, these people are unresponsive until you start quoting passages out of the Bible. He says, but he said, I would slip things in, like really obscure things that only the most profound ecclesiastical scholars would understand. He says, and it drove them nuts. He said, I could just say a few phrases. He said, and it may have sounded off center. He said, but to a normal person, you just think, it's a bit of a strange comment. He said, to these guys, it was like you were pouring brick acid on them. You know what I mean?
I
So
I would love to hear this guy. If I could ask you, please,
I'll
to
look up. It's James Delingpole. I don't know if he's still on YouTube, but he's definitely on various other streaming platforms like Rumble and Odyssey, etc. So I'll find that conversation in particular, and it may well be the same one that William's talking about. So if William wants to pass on that conversation to me, but this guy is a doctor, a medical doctor. He is a clinical psychologist. In the same vein as Dr. Bruce Scott, for instance. And he just said, he says, the one thing that these people, he says, you can call them all the season teas under the suns, as we would say in things. Just don't bat an eyelid. You can call them murderers, you can call them child offenders, you can call them all things under the sun. Nothing touches them. He said, but you slip in, and these aren't, like I say, they're not. They may have been. Williams dropped one link in there that might
Yeah,
be the one. But
that's the guy I know about. And when they talk about it, he basically says similar to what you've said, in that they're the only way to describe these things are demons, basically.
yeah,
And
demons.
it was really interesting. Yes, so it must be similar or same.
Like, this is where I get the justification for my term, which is evil demons, but these people are schizophrenic, yeah? So they're not in a good place, and it could be for a myriad of reasons. They could be ex-servicemen. They could be people who've experienced personal harms, like as in abuse, etc., etc. And that seems to make them susceptible to illicit forces, for want of a better word. And he was saying, I would question these people, like, when was the last time I was at church? Oh, well, I went to my cousin's daughter's christening 23 years ago. I went to an aunt's funeral about 15 years. So you don't really go to church a lot. No. I'm not I just go to, like, hatch, match, and dispatch Christianity. In other words, born, married, death, sort of, the funeral side of things. And he goes and said, well, once I've got that sort of bar line there, that these are not sort of, religious zealots or, Bible bashers in the real sense, because I'll just say, I'll be in there in a conversation and just say, yeah, and in the shadow of men go, mice or some crap like that, yeah. He says, and these guys will just kick off. They'll just go absolutely batshit crazy. They'll just like lose it completely, and they won't even know what I've said. He said, because later on down the line, I'll say this. Why did you say that? I have no idea. He said, just this overwhelming sense of, you've got to shut this bloke up, shut him up now. And it was like I say, it was, if it had been, like a Clinton Baptiste, like, I'm getting the word, none. Like if it was a Clinton Baptiste style, Charlotte, this bloke just said he happened upon it. And so that went by, and in a completely different institution and a different type of clinical personality, if you like, from a different, the root cause of their psychological split was completely different to the other one. Like, that one was a veteran, like an army veteran who'd seen tours in Vietnam, bad tours, etc., that kind of thing. Oh, well, he's probably just a bit touchy anyway. This was a completely different one. It was a young woman. Was it? It was a young person who'd been abused, yeah, but not in the sort of sexual sense, just like through foster homes, not been abused in the sexual sense, but had been badly abused as regards to being hit, cigarette burns. So poorly used person, yeah. When was the last time in church? I've never been in church. Are you a Christian? I don't know. I was born an orphan. So these people don't know, yeah. And then you'll say, like, yeah, it's quite interesting because when I walk through the valley of the shadow of, and woof, they're off like a bloody, like a time bomb. They just kick off. As soon as he starts reading anything that can be misconstrued as scripture, even if it was conversational, you wouldn't have if you and I were just saying it in conversation, we wouldn't even pick up on it. Yeah.
I just want to.
These people pick up on it and buff it off like a bottle of pop. You know what I mean?
I just want to chime in for a moment and say that two things. First, I actually have to get going in just a few moments. So without being rude, I'm going to have to leave in a couple of minutes. And the other is I've actually had experiences exactly like what you're talking about, Sensum. Many, many months ago, last year, I think, I was in this. I can't believe I'm having a memory about being in a chat. Good God. I was in a chat in a live stream for James Lindsay, of all people. And there was a person in the chat who kept, because James Lindsay is, he's an atheist, but he happens to hang out and talk with a lot of people who are Christians. And so you'll see a little bit of chatter in the background of some of his comment sections about, atheism and so on, and people challenging Christians. And a peculiar thing happened in the chat where the person started saying something about be a pagan, don't be a Christian, be a pagan. That's the real European way or something. And in the back of my head, I cannot explain it. To this day, I have no idea why. That guy pinged on my radar, and I was like, I know what you are. I know exactly what you are. So I centered myself on interacting with this person, and I did exactly what you're talking about. I started talking about things in a theological manner. And one of the things that I kept centering on was, you're not special. You are not what you think you are. This person lost their mind at me. They started posting with like caps lock. At one point, they called me a Roman. Anyone in the chat will have no idea why I was called a Roman, but I knew, and I knew that the other person knew. And it was the weirdest thing, because I honestly felt like I had pulled the cloth up and I had demasked the person. And they were showing everything. All of the anger and venom that you can possibly imagine, absolutely there in language form. And yes, it reminded me of. In fact, even at the time, I remember thinking to myself about exorcisms. And I remember coming to the conclusion at one point that you cannot defeat a demon. You cannot banish evil. Or let me phrase that. You cannot destroy evil. Evil is technically impossible to destroy. What you can do is you can create a condition in which itself it exiles itself. It removes itself from the situation. So you can create a situation where it flees. And that, I think, is the basis of banishment, really. You're not commanding it to go and then it goes, per se. I mean, I guess you kind of are on one level. But on the other hand, if you just speak the word, speak the truth, speak the word of God, good heavens, they flip out. They lose their minds. And typically they run. They flee. In the instance of this person in this particular chat, I got them to freak out to the point where they left. They self-selected out. Everyone else kept watching the stream, and no one had any idea what was going on in the chat. But I will call the person a demon for the purposes of this exchange. I called out the demon, and the demon left.
Eki was trolling the guy.
Yeah, it was hardcore trolling. That's what it was.
Yeah, well, all I will say is I know you've got to go, Eki, and thank you for that. But I will definitely find that James Dellingpole podcast with that chap on, because, like I say, I pretty much am of a similar sort of bent when it comes to the hatch, matched, and dispatched side of Christianity. But I will say, I think that my Christian tendencies, in the real sense, rather than the kayfabe, which is the Orthodox Church and the Roman Catholic Church. I'm thinking in my own sensibilities, and that personally, I am becoming a lot more Christian in my beliefs, shall we say. But I'll definitely find that, and I'll definitely send there.
I would appreciate it. I really would.
And like I say, it was, to me, it was just because once again, you know, people would often sort of ridicule people of this nature and say, "Oh, he's just trying to sell a book," or "Oh, he's just trying to." Listen, all this bloke has set himself up for is ridicule. And he is a professional, a properly qualified medical professional who is literally just recounting experience that he's had, and he's come in for all kinds of ridicule. And he doesn't say, I think this or I think that. All I'm saying is, if you dare utter certain things out of the Bible, even when it's obfuscated to the target, you know, the patient in question, I should say, not target, it drives them nuts. And he couldn't explain it. So, yeah. I will do that, Eki, and God bless.
Yeah. Cheers. Thank you. Well, yes, thank you. That's a very interesting thing to hear, and I would love to hear more about it. Thank you, William. I saw your link, and I've got it up in my browser. So
Yeah, check it out. The guy Jerry, I can't remember his second name.
Yeah, I think it is Jerry. Yeah.
Yeah, it's everything
Marzinski?
Sansom said. Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
yeah. Well, I'm going to check
So,
that one out.
cool.
Even if it's not the one that Sensen was talking about, I'm still going to check it out anyway.
Cool.
So
Take
thank
care.
you for that. And John, thank you for having me on. Thanks for the stream, man.
No problem. Always my pleasure to have your company here.
Yeah,
Always interesting. And let me just finish off by saying that I can attest to the fact that demons are real. The spirit world is real. And it's something that is always at work. So take care.
Yeah, I think we're gonna find ourselves culturally, civilizationally. I think we're gonna be looking back to things that some of our ancestors said, and I think we'll be saying to ourselves, "Huh, not so crazy after all."
No.
Anyhow,
Absolutely no. Well, you take care, my friend.
yeah,
And
thank you.
perhaps if there's enough interest in the subject, we could arrange a live stream to discuss it.
I speak for myself when I say I would be interested because I find the topic very, very pertinent to our times.
Oh, it is. It is.
So anyway, I have to let out. Thank you again.
Okay. You
And I
take
hope
care.
everyone remembers to floss, and God bless you all.
You take care, sis. Oh, man. Is this a subject you would be interested in, William?
Yeah, it is. I've got a family member who's diagnosed schizophrenic. They got diagnosed probably in about, we're going back now, 2008 possibly, and still to this day tormented with it, heavily medicated for year after year, tablets, injections, you name it. So for quite a while, I mean, it tormented my dad, something chronic. It's one of my older brothers. So for quite a while, I looked into it quite a bit, and I came across the guy Jerry through the channel Windows on the World, and it honestly, what the stuff that he says is quite outstanding. It takes me aback, and I think, I mean, it's pretty clear to me that we're looking in the wrong direction with these so-called illnesses. We're medicating people with drugs that turn them into characterless entities, pretty much. That's what my brother became, a soulless character, completely drugged out. And if he ever sort of went off it, he would be in a bad way. And I always felt they could never get to the root of it. I was always asking the question, any panel we went to or meeting, I was always asking, look, what's the cause? What's the root? How do we stop it? All they seem to do is numb it out. But unless he continues to take the medication, nothing improves, nothing changes. And I know not just in my family I've seen it, but also friends that I've got right from about, again, 2000, from about 2005 onwards. I've had friends who have been in and out of institutions, mental institutions, their whole life now, either prison or a mental institution. As far as I'm aware, the majority of prisoners are classed as people who should probably be in a mental institution, but because they don't have the room, they put them into a prison.
Yeah, I know.
So it's a topic, I would certainly be interested in giving a kind of opinion on it.
Yeah. Well, I'm not saying that any of us would come up with solutions, but it would be an interesting enough subject to open up for general discussion, and I'm sure our audience would be interested in such a topic. I think you would be also interested, since
I think it would make for a great topic if you could also have somebody from that background on as well. In other words, from the like somebody who I've been on streams with before, but with Resisting the Lies, Dr. Bruce Scott, who himself is a psychologist and a psychoanalyst.
Uh-huh.
So it would be very interesting to have if it could be arranged, that is, which obviously through DJ, everybody, we all know how to get in touch with DJ. But it would be great to get the professional, if you like, the professionals.
An authoritative voice.
Yeah. So this guy, this Jerry guy, and I'm certain it is the same chap that William's on about, who I'm talking about with regards to James Delingpole. It would be great to have like a Dr. Bruce Scott, who's also from those circles, to play devil's advocate, in other words, to say, well, this particular thing could be misconstrued as, because it would be very interesting to get because obviously I'm not a clinical psychiatrist, James Delingpole isn't, the various people who this Jerry's spoken to probably aren't, but Bruce Scott is. So it would be, to us, it may seem like smoke and mirrors or a bit of magic. He started speaking about the scripture, woof, they're off like a bottle of pop. Whereas Dr. Bruce Scott could turn around and say, yes, well, in certain instances, you could give the appearance of that. However, it could also be, and then some, completely rational reason. Now,
Sure.
If some of the things that this Jerry guy was saying, and obviously it would take the time and effort of, if indeed he hasn't already heard the podcasts with regards to this Jerry chap, and I'm sorry for saying Jerry chap, I just can't remember his name, but he is a medical doctor. Yeah, he's not one of these, he's not a Mystic Meg or a Colin Fry. He is a properly trained medical clinician. Yeah,
Sure.
But if Dr. Bruce Scott, who's also a formally trained medical clinician, was to come out and say, well, this could also be, then I want that opinion to be heard also, because otherwise the compelling argument is, well, it might be October, I don't know, but the compelling argument, when you listen to the James Delingpole one and other ones that I've heard this guy on before, there is a very real sense that demons are a reality, and I personally, I genuinely, I feel that way. Yeah, I've got nothing substantial to back it up. It is an internal feeling. Yeah, and this is coming from somebody who isn't steeped in out and out Christianity. I just have that inherent feeling that there is demonic elements out there. Yeah.
Absolutely.
But
Absolutely.
I would much rather have every single one of my thoughts and assumptions torn down through factual rebuttal than just merely go around and say, yeah, well, there definitely is.
Is
Because
that not what YouTube does to you?
no, because like I say, when it comes to things like the climate hoax, I know enough of my own research and technical knowledge in certain things to know that this is just bullshit. Yeah. You know, these idiots are talking about weather, not climate, basically.
Don't be
But when
silly.
it
Don't be
comes,
silly. These people, they wear white coats. They know what they're talking about. You're going to be underwater soon. I hope you can swim, Sensum.
I've got this submarine by OceanGate. It's brilliant. It'll go down to the Titanic and everything. But I'm not
Is
conscious
it
of John's
true?
time.
Sorry, I seen someone said that the new Titanic movie is coming out this year. Surely not. Is it? Does anyone
I
know?
don't know, mate. I've
It
got a
can't be.
sinking feeling about that one, to be honest.
Why would anybody be making yet another one of these? Oh dear. I don't know.
Well, anyway, sorry, John. To go back to your original question, I am streaming tomorrow night, propping up the internet like what William says, with no foundation whatsoever. I do a weekly stream at most, apart from when I'm a guest on other people's streams. These are scurrilous, slanderous remarks by William.
The backbone of YouTube. Stand
but-
by, folks. Get ready. Get a cup of tea. Sensum's about to tell you the week ahead.
Yes. Go
Well,
ahead.
no, I tried to sort of give people a shout out, obviously, but yeah. So tomorrow night at 8 o'clock on my channel, it'll be the news at 8, and there might even be a story about a certain submarine, and I might have even, thought about a particular song by the Beatles and added a couple of extra lyrics. Should we cover that subject tomorrow? But that'll be tomorrow night at 8 o'clock, ahead of 42 stream, which will usually go out at 10:30. Although he hasn't let me know what that's going to be about. But knowing 42, it'll be something historical and very good. But anyway, John, I'm conscious of the time. In fairness, sir, you've stayed the distance and you've looked really good on it and everything. So I'm only glad that you're feeling a lot better, sir. And
Likewise.
God
Right,
bless
so
you.
we've got 42 on Saturday evening. We have Toffee and yourself at 8 o'clock Saturday evening. Sunday, we have Ragnar.
Ragnar Ironsby is on at 7 o'clock with Whiskey Al as a guest, and then at 8:30 we have Sunday with the Lads, which is our good friend DJ Resisting the Lies, Scott's Armour, and third chair, the one and only Clive Maxwell, Llewellyn Chance the Third, No Chance, backing up the, and then obviously yourself, John, every Tuesday, Thursday, and Friday at 9 p.m.
Okay, folks. So there you have it. We have a line-up for over the weekend. If you wish to spend the time on YouTube, there is plenty of material for you to be watching. And Any final words then, William, before you say cheerio?
Not really. I just want to say I hope Steve's all right. Steve Cray, he's a great guy, the #1 moderator. I know what it's like. Life can be a bugger. We all know what it can be like. So I hope he's okay. And if he ever wants to talk, then he can hit me up and I can give him my number and we can speak or email, whatever it may be. But I hope he's okay. And keep your heads high, folks. Don't give in. Keep going and stay strong. Take care.
Good advice, William. Right, take you out of the stream. Say some last words.
Nothing more than you take care of yourself, John. Obviously, you're 100% fighting fit on Tuesday, and God bless everybody in the chat. Thank you.
Okay, take you out of the stream. Okay, folks, I'll bring on the outro music. And yes, I've lasted rather well this evening, longer than I expected to last, to be honest. So that's good. That's all good. And hopefully next week I'll be a bit more of my old self. Tuesday, Thursday and Friday. And until then, adios, au revoir, cheerio. And until Tuesday, goodbye for now. Enjoy the music.
Silently the snow falls, paints a winter scene, swiftly spreads the dark rim, hides the fading autumn green. Moonbeams brush the dark wood, conjure friendships dear to me. Lightly now the breeze flows, disturbing more than just the leaves. But life's much more than we can know. We are one small glow in the eternal flow. Patiently the love grows, lifts the weary heart. Gently now she holds me, melts two worlds once apart. Moonbeams brush the dark wood, usher dreams of you and me. Softly then the breeze blows, disturbing more than just the trees.
All together now,
Love's much more
so much more
than we can know.
than we can ever possibly know.
We are one small glow
What an
in
important
the
goal.
eternal flow. Melodies of long ago, songs of innocence, harmonies to soothe the soul, have some consequence. Moonbeams brush the dark wood, awakening joys of you and me. Silently the snow falls, bringing winter symphony.
All together now,
But we're much more
so much more
than we can know.
than we can ever possibly know.
We are one small glow
And a very important glow
in the eternal flow. But life's much more and we can know we are one small globe in the eternal flow.
Okay, folks, you take care. I'll speak to you all real soon. Enjoy the rest of your weekend. Bye for now. Bye.